Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Oh, darling, let me tell you about that night in the old Whispering Pines Hotel. It's etched into my soul like the faint scar on my wrist. From that summer, I decided to learn rock climbing at 35, thinking it would prove I wasn't too old for adventure. I'd booked the trip on a whim, fresh off a breakup that left me questioning every choice I'd ever made. You know the kind, where you stare at your reflection in the bathroom mirror at 2 a.m., wondering if the lines around your eyes are from laughter or just exhaustion. I was there to reclaim myself, to wander solo through misty forests by day and sip herbal tea in a quiet room by night. But life, as I've learned from too many late-night confessions with my best friend over wine, has a way of flipping the script. The lobby was a velvet-draped dream, all dim chandeliers casting golden flickers on worn marble floors that whispered secrets with every step. The receptionist, a woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes like polished obsidian, handed me my keycard with a practiced smile. But then, as I turned away, she slipped another into my palm, cool metal against my skin, like a forbidden promise. "Don't go to the one you booked," she murmured, her voice barely above the hum of the air conditioner. "Trust me." I froze, heart thudding like it did that time I stood up to my boss and demanded the raise I deserved, only to walk away shaking. Questions bubbled up, but she was already attending to the next guest. Her back turned as if nothing had happened. I headed to the alternate room, 312, instead of my booked 214, my suitcase wheels rumbling like distant thunder. The hallway stretched endlessly, walls papered in faded florals that seemed to bloom and wilt in the low light. 5 minutes later, as I unpacked my favorite silk scarf, a gift from my late aunt, who always said, "Wrap yourself in beauty when the world feels ugly," screams pierced the air. Not blood-curdling horror movie wails, but raw, guttural cries echoing from down the hall, from what should have been my door. My pulse raced. I could taste the metallic tang of fear, reminiscent of the night I fled my ex's apartment, keys jangling in my trembling hand, vowing never to let anyone dim my light again. Curiosity won over caution. Doesn't it always for us women who've learned to navigate the world's sharp edges? I crept back, the carpet muffling my footsteps like a conspirator. Peeking through the cracked door of 214, I expected chaos, perhaps a robbery or worse. Instead, the room was alive with women, dozens of them, circled under a canopy of string lights that twinkled like stars in a midnight sky. Their screams were chants, powerful affirmations rising in waves. "I am unbreakable. I rise from the ashes." It was a secret gathering, a sisterhood of survivors, divorcees, entrepreneurs who'd lost everything, artists fighting invisibility. The air hummed with energy, scented with lavender and determination, vivid as the crimson dresses some wore, flowing like rivers of resilience. One woman, with tattoos snaking up her arms like vines reclaiming a forgotten garden, spotted me. "Come in," she beckoned, her voice warm as fresh-baked bread. I hesitated, memories flooding. The time I joined a women's circle after my miscarriage, sharing tears and stories that stitched my heart back together. Stepping inside felt like diving into an ocean, terrifying yet exhilarating. They shared their tales. A single mom who'd built a business from scraps, a veteran fighting PTSD with poetry. I opened up too, my voice cracking at first, then steadying, like the first rays of sun-piercing storm clouds. We screamed together, not in pain, but in release, banishing doubts that had haunted us. By dawn, as pale light filtered through the curtains, painting the room in soft pinks and golds, I felt reborn. The hotel, once a mere pit stop, had become a sanctuary. I left with numbers exchanged, promises of coffee meetups, and a fire in my belly that hadn't burned so brightly since I quit my soul-sucking job to pursue writing full-time. Sisters, if there's one thing that night taught me, and I hope it ignites something in you too, it's this. Don't shy away from the whispers of the unknown. That slipped key, that unexpected scream? It might just lead you to the strength you've been carrying all along. Seek out those hidden rooms in your life, gather with those who lift you, and scream your truth until the world echoes it back. You are unbreakable. Now go claim your dawn. The Whispering Pines Hotel stood like a forgotten dream at the edge of a misty forest, its ivy-clad facade glowing faintly under the moon's watchful gaze. I'd booked a solo trip, craving escape after a breakup that left me raw, like the time I burned my hand baking my first loaf of bread. Painful, but a lesson in resilience. At 36, I was done letting heartbreak define me. This was my chance to wander trails by day, sketch the pines' jagged silhouettes, and curl up with chamomile tea in a quiet room, rebuilding the woman I'd let slip away. The lobby welcomed me with a hush, its air heavy with the scent of polished wood and old secrets. Chandeliers dripped amber light, casting shadows that danced across marble floors worn smooth by countless footsteps. I approached the front desk, my boots clicking softly, echoing the nervous rhythm of my heart. The receptionist, a woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes sharp as midnight, handed me my key card for room 214 with a smile that felt too knowing. As I turned to leave, her hand grazed mine, pressing a cold metallic key into my palm, an old-fashioned one, not like the sleek card. "Don't go to the one you booked," she whispered, her voice low, like the wind rustling through the forest outside. My breath caught, the way it did when I once stood on a cliff's edge, daring myself to leap into the lake below. Questions swirled. Why this key? What was wrong with 214? But she'd already turned to the next guest, her face a mask of indifference, as if she hadn't just tilted my world. I gripped the key, its edges biting into my skin, and headed to the alternate room, 312, my suitcase wheels grumbling along the carpeted hallway. The walls, lined with faded floral wallpaper, seemed to pulse in the dim light, blooming and wilting as I passed. My mind raced, replaying moments of defiance, like the day I walked out of a toxic job, my heels clicking with purpose, or when I told my ex I deserved better. Yet fear gnawed at me, a familiar shadow from nights spent doubting my worth. I reached 312, unlocked the door, and stepped into a room that smelled of lavender and fresh linen, its simplicity calming my nerves. I set down my bag, unwrapping my favorite silk scarf, a gift from my aunt, who'd taught me to find beauty in chaos, and began to unpack. 5 minutes later, screams shattered the silence. Not horror movie shrieks, but raw, visceral cries echoing from down the hall, from what should have been my room, 214. My heart pounded, blood rushing like it did when I ran from my ex's apartment. Keys jangling, vowing never to shrink again. I stood frozen, the key to 312 still in my hand, its cold weight urging me to move, to uncover the truth behind the receptionist's cryptic warning. The screams from room 214 clawed at the air, raw and urgent, pulling me back from the fragile calm of room 312. My hand tightened around the old-fashioned key, its edges sharp against my palm, grounding me like the worn leather journal I'd clutched during late nights rewriting my life story after the breakup. I'd come to the Whispering Pines Hotel to stitch myself back together, to walk misty forest trails and reclaim the spark I'd lost to a man who dimmed my light and a job that drained my soul. At 36, I was done apologizing for taking up space. But those screams, guttural, almost primal, stirred a cocktail of fear and curiosity. The same mix that had pushed me to confront my boss years ago, heart hammering as I demanded the respect I'd earned. I stepped into the hallway, the faded floral wallpaper seeming to writhe in the flickering light, like vines creeping toward some hidden truth. The carpet muffled my steps, but each one echoed in my chest, a drumbeat of defiance and doubt. I'd been here before, not in this eerie hotel, but in moments of choice, leaving my ex's apartment, keys jangling like a battle cry, signing up for that pottery class despite my fear of failure, hands trembling as they shaped clay into something new. The screams grew louder as I neared 214, not cries of pain, but something fiercer, like voices breaking free. My mind flashed to my aunt's funeral, her silk scarf around my shoulders, her voice in my ear, "Find beauty in the chaos, love." I pressed my ear to the door, the wood cool against my cheek. Through the crack, I glimpsed movement, shadows shifting under a glow of string lights, like stars trapped in a velvet sky. The air carried whispers of lavender and something electric, like the charge before a storm. I pushed the door open, heart racing as if I were stepping onto a stage, the way I did when I read my poetry aloud for the first time, voice shaky but growing steady. Inside, women filled the room, dozens, maybe more, circled like a coven, their faces a tapestry of ages and stories. Some wore crimson dresses that flowed like rivers, others jeans and scars like me. Their screams were chants, fierce and rhythmic. "I am enough. I rise!" It wasn't chaos. It was a rebellion, a secret gathering of warriors who'd faced their own battles and refused to bow. A woman with tattoos curling up her arms like ivy caught my eye, her gaze warm yet fierce, like the campfire nights with my best friend when we'd confess our fears over wine. "Join us," she said, voice soft as bread fresh from the oven. I hesitated, memories flooding. The women's circle after my miscarriage, tears weaving us together. The moment I chose myself over a life that no longer fit. Stepping forward, I felt the room's pulse, its walls humming with the courage of every woman there, ready to share her truth. The room pulsed with the energy of the women's chants, their voices weaving a tapestry of defiance that drowned out the echoes of screams I'd heard minutes ago. Room 214, meant to be mine, was no ordinary hotel suite. It was a sanctuary lit by a constellation of string lights, their golden glow dancing across faces etched with stories. The air thrummed with lavender and sweat, a scent that reminded me of my aunt's garden, where I'd sit as a girl, dirt under my nails, learning that growth comes from messy roots. I stood at the threshold, the old key to room 312 still clutched in my hand, its weight a tether to the receptionist's cryptic warning. My heart pounded, not unlike the night I walked away from my ex, his voice fading as I chose myself, or when I quit my soul-crushing job, my heels clicking with purpose on the office floor. The tattooed woman's invitation hung in the air, her eyes holding mine like a lighthouse in a storm. I stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind me, sealing me into this strange sisterhood. The women's chants, "I am unbreakable. I rise," vibrated through my bones, stirring memories of my own battles. The miscarriage that left me hollow, the poetry readings where my voice shook but grew steady, the pottery wheel where I molded failure into art. These women, in their crimson dresses and worn jeans, were survivors, divorcees, dreamers, fighters. One, with silver hair like the receptionists, spoke of rebuilding a business after bankruptcy. Another, barely 20, shared how she'd escaped an abusive home, her voice fierce as a wildfire. I sank onto a cushion, the room's warmth wrapping around me like the silk scarf my aunt gave me, her words echoing, "Find beauty in the chaos." My own story spilled out, halting at first, like the first time I told my best friend about the breakup over wine, tears mixing with laughter. I spoke of the ex who made me feel small, the job that dimmed my spark, the solo trip to the Whispering Pines to reclaim my fire. The women listened, their nods a silent vow of solidarity, their eyes reflecting my own resilience. I wasn't alone, hadn't been, even in my darkest moments. Like when I sat in a women's circle after loss, stitching my heart back together with shared tears. As I spoke, the chants resumed, louder, fiercer, like waves crashing against a shore I'd built from my own strength. My voice joined theirs, raw and unpolished, releasing doubts I'd carried too long. The room's walls, papered in faded florals, seemed to pulse with our collective power, the lights above flickering like stars cheering us on. I felt exposed yet invincible, like standing on a cliff before leaping into a lake, the water cold but exhilarating. This wasn't just a gathering, it was a reckoning. A mirror held up to my fears, showing me the woman I was becoming, forged in the fire of every scream, every choice, every step toward this moment. The chants of the women in room 214 wove a fierce harmony, their voices rising like a tide, washing away the last tremors of fear that had gripped me since the screams first echoed from this door. The string lights overhead cast a warm glow, painting the faces around me in hues of gold and shadow, each one a canvas of survival, lines etched by loss, eyes bright with defiance. I sat cross-legged on a cushion, the silk scarf from my aunt draped over my shoulders, its soft weight a reminder of her words. Find beauty in the chaos. The room smelled of lavender and courage, a scent that took me back to summer nights in her garden, where I'd learned that strength grows from broken soil. The old key to room 312, still in my hand, felt like a talisman, its cold metal grounding me as I absorbed the truth of this secret sisterhood. My voice had joined theirs, raw and unsteady at first, like when I'd read my poetry aloud to a room of strangers, heart-pounding but growing bolder with each word, sharing my story of the breakup that shattered me, the job that dulled my fire, the solo trip to the Whispering Pines to rediscover my spark, had cracked something open. The women's nods, their murmurs of, "Yes, sister," echoed the women's circle I'd joined after my miscarriage, where tears and stories stitched us together. Here, a woman with a shaved head and a scar across her cheek spoke of surviving a car accident that stole her mobility but not her will. Another, in a crimson dress flowing like a river, told of escaping a cult, her voice steady as stone. Their stories wove into mine, threads of resilience binding us. As the chant swelled, I rise. I am enough. I felt my doubts dissolve, like fog burning off under dawn's first light. The room's faded floral walls seemed to pulse, alive with our collective strength, the air electric as if charged by a coming storm. I thought of the receptionist's warning, her obsidian eyes, the key she'd slipped me. Had she known this awaited? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, like the moment I stood up to my ex, keys jangling as I walked away, vowing never to shrink again. Here I was unshrinking, my voice growing louder, my heart fuller. A woman with tattoos like ivy passed me a candle, its flame flickering like the hope I'd nursed through sleepless nights. Lighting it, I felt part of something ancient, a lineage of women who'd faced fire and emerged gleaming. The chants became a heartbeat, mine and theirs, syncing with memories of my aunt's laughter, my best friend's wine-soaked confessions, my own pen-scratching dreams onto paper. As dawn's pale light crept through the curtains, painting the room in pinks and golds, I stood taller, my shadow stretching across the floor, no longer a ghost but a warrior, forged anew in this unexpected haven of screams and sisterhood. The dawn's first rays slipped through the curtains of room 214, painting the walls in soft pinks and golds, as if the Whispering Pines Hotel itself was exhaling a sigh of renewal. The women's chants had softened, their voices now a low hum, like the murmur of a forest after a storm. I held the candle passed to me, its flame steady in my hands, mirroring the fire I'd felt reignite within me. The silk scarf around my shoulders, my aunt's gift, felt like an embrace, her words, "Find beauty in the chaos," woven into the fabric of this moment. The room, once alive with the raw screams that had drawn me here, now pulsed with a quieter strength, the air thick with lavender and the warmth of shared truths. The old key to room 3-12, still clutched in my palm, was a reminder of the receptionist's cryptic warning, her obsidian eyes guiding me to this unexpected sanctuary. As I looked around, the women's faces glowed in the candlelight, each a story, each a mirror. The tattooed woman who'd welcomed me shared how she'd rebuilt her life after prison, her voice steady as the ink on her skin. Another, with gray curls and hands calloused from years of labor, spoke of raising 3 kids alone after her husband's betrayal. Their stories echoed my own, the breakup that left me questioning my worth, the job I quit when I realized it was dimming my light, the women's circle after my miscarriage where tears became threads of connection. I'd shared my truth here, my voice cracking like it did when I first read my poetry aloud, only to grow stronger, buoyed by their nods and fierce affirmations. The chants had faded, but the energy lingered, a current running through us, binding us like the late-night talks with my best friend over wine. When we'd laugh and cry and promise to keep fighting, I exchanged numbers with a woman in a crimson dress, her smile as warm as the campfire nights of my youth, and another who'd escaped a war-torn home, her eyes bright with dreams. The room's faded floral walls, once eerie in the hallway's dim light, now felt like a garden in bloom, each petal a testament to our resilience. I thought of the receptionist, her silver-streaked hair, her whispered command to take the other key. Had she seen something in me, a spark ready to flare? As the light grew brighter, I felt reborn, like the morning I woke after leaving my ex, sunlight streaming through my window, promising new beginnings. The women began to disperse, their laughter and whispers trailing like smoke. I tucked the key into my pocket, its weight a promise to carry this strength forward. Stepping into the hallway, the hotel's silence felt different, not heavy, but hopeful, like the hush before a new chapter. My shadow stretched long, no longer a ghost but a woman forged in the fire of screams, stories, and sisterhood, ready to claim her dawn. As I stepped out of the Whispering Pines Hotel into the crisp morning air, the forest beyond shimmered with dew, each droplet catching the dawn like a tiny prism of possibility. The key to room 312 rested in my pocket, a quiet reminder of the night that had cracked me open and pieced me back together, stronger, fiercer, whole. I'd come here to find myself, but I'd found so much more, a sisterhood of warriors, their stories woven into mine, their chants still echoing in my chest like a heartbeat I'd forgotten I had. The screams that had jolted me from my booked room weren't cries of fear, but calls to rise, to claim the power I'd always carried, buried under doubts and heartbreaks. I thought of my aunt's scarf, now tucked into my bag, and her words, "Find beauty in the chaos." I had, and it was radiant. Sisters, hear this. Life will hand you keys to rooms you didn't choose, paths you didn't plan. Take them. Walk toward the screams, the unknowns, the moments that scare you. You'll find your own circle of unbreakable souls, waiting to lift you up. Embrace the chaos. It's where your strength blooms. Now go, claim your dawn, and light the world with your fire.